The theme of today's show is money. Money. Well, more specifically, cash flow and how to have money in hand for you and your business. We'll check in with one of our longtime collaborators, Mark Schanen from Supporting Strategies, to give us the information we need. We'll also share breaking news. Not just that Aaron Rodgers is coming back to the Packers, that's breaking news, but breaking news inside the Idea Collective because our retreat has a new deadline for the early bird tickets. We'll tell you about that. And we'll challenge the folks in the room today to our roundtable question. What is one thing they're working on to complete by Friday? And then what needs to happen in order for you to get it done? It's not just the question, it's the question behind the question. So welcome in to Small Business Rally Point. You know what this is, the official weekly meeting of small business owners everywhere. I'm your host, Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. So this show brings together small business owners into a community so we can learn a little, laugh a little, and do some networking. We'll do that with the Quick Trip After Party when we're done with today's show. It's a break in your Monday afternoon and hopefully something you look forward to. I know I do. Big thanks to our sponsors, Bank 59, Quick Trip, Serendipity Labs, and of course, the Idea Collective collaboration community for small business owners. Now, this show is interactive. That means, hey, we're having a conversation here. So if you have questions, comments, or sarcastic remarks, they are encouraged. Drop them into the chat. We'll work them into the show. And of course, we'll hang out for our networking afterwards. Let's get on with it, though. Our guest today is Mark Schanen, a former global CFO for a division of GE Capital, now the owner of Supporting Strategies in Milwaukee. His firm provides bookkeeping and controller-level services for small to mid-sized businesses and nonprofits in the greater Milwaukee area. Mark, it is so great to see you. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Pat. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. You enjoying the summer so far? Do anything fun?
Yeah, a lot of travel so far, but we're headed off to Myrtle Beach in August, so that'll be fun.
Man,
Yeah.
I love that area of the country. Well,
Yeah.
to do that kind of stuff, you got to have money in your pocket. And to have money in your pocket as a small business owner, you got to have cash flow. So today's show is about small business cash flow. So when you, former CFO, owner of Supporting Strategy, says cash flow, translate that to me as simple small business owner. What are you talking about?
It's your money in versus your money out, right? So pretty simple in terms of the checkbook math here that you're talking about. And I think one of the things that people always get tripped up on is the timing of when those inflows come in and when those outflows go out, right? And I think probably one of the number one things that people ask for help with is, how do I fix my cash flow problem? I want to be able to pay myself, or I need to be able to pay my staff, and the cash isn't coming in quick enough, even though I'm profitable or my revenue is where it needs to be. So depending on how big your business is, you might be doing accrual accounting, right? And that could mean that your cash flow could be months after when you've accrued for the revenue and you look profitable, but you don't feel it yet.
That has to be one of the most frustrating things with clients that you work with. Like they're selling like crazy, but there's no money on hand. Is this common? Do you see this often?
It's usually the number one cause of small business failure, actually. If you look at any of the surveys from like the SBA or anything like that, you always hear X percent of businesses fail in these number of years, right? Most of them aren't around after 10 years. Why did they fail? Almost every single one of them it's because of cash. It's not because they weren't profitable enough. It's not because they weren't selling something that people wanted. It's because they didn't manage their cash.
And managing their
So
cash
it's an
means
interesting sort of dynamic.
is that making bad
Means making
decisions?
sure that no, not necessarily. It means stretching out your payments as long as you can and taking in your cash as fast as you can and knowing when those two things are going to happen, right? And it's very hard to do that if you don't have good accounting and controls behind the scenes to make that happen.
Okay, so hold on to
Does that
cash.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Hold
Yeah,
the cash as long as you can and then pay as late as you can. Is that the kind of idea you're going for here?
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So
When
what are
I was
some
at
of the
GE, we had a whole division devoted to that, actually. So whenever we had a new supplier come on board, one of the things that we would do is we'd negotiate the price of whatever it was we were buying. Let's say it was sheet metal, right? But then after we were done negotiating and beating somebody up on the price of the product, then we'd go and we'd beat them up on the payment terms, right? We'd stretch it out 90 days, 120 days. If they'd let us, we'd go as far as 180 days. And that would also generate a certain amount of profit, right? Because that's effectively interest-free debt. So you think about what you pay for a credit card, it's say 18%, maybe north of that, versus zero. It's a pretty easy trade-off for you to make if you start thinking about it. I know a lot of people like to pay their bills as soon as they get them, and I don't deny that that makes a lot of sense. But if you're struggling with cash, one of the first things that you should be looking at is, okay, what suppliers can I stretch out? What suppliers can't I stretch out, right?
And that being another negotiating point is interesting, because if you don't do a lot of deals like this, you don't necessarily think, well, the price is this. Okay, I'll pay that. And then let's talk about this other negotiable to help improve your cash flow position. So you mentioned about paying things quickly. Um, like the bill comes in and I pay it out right away. That will limit your ability to keep cash on hand. What are some of the other mistakes you see small business owners making?
Another really common one is invoicing. I mean, it's hard to invoice on time, but the frequency of how quickly you invoice and how often you invoice. I mean, so like in my business, I invoice biweekly and it corresponds directly with my payroll for my team, right? So I have cash on hand to pay for the payroll without having to float it, right? I pay it as soon as I get it kind of thing. And it creates an issue otherwise where I would have to have a month's worth of payroll outstanding and then I would collect it. Or, the other thing you can do in some service industries or other industries is you can bill in advance. So you can get paid before you actually do the work and you incur the cost, right? So that's another common tactic that maybe people don't always pay attention to, and they should, right? Because cash is king and the timing of when you have that is very important. I think one thing that all of us learned during the COVID crisis was getting close with a banker, hopefully, right? You have a banking relationship at this point. You should have a banking relationship. Ideally, you have some sort of a credit line in place in case stuff hits the fan. And yes, we all got benefited from the PPP loan and all that kind of thing, but that took a good 3-4 weeks before it was through Congress and people were seeing cash from it. So if you were managing on a shoestring budget and you just didn't have any cash coming in all of a sudden, let's say you had a lot of restaurant customers and they all closed, something like that's going to create a lot of challenges for you. So if you had a good relationship with your banker, you'd say, hey, I expect to get paid. I just haven't gotten paid yet. Right. And then it becomes much easier to draw down your line and then pay off the line and kind of manage things that way. So not having any kind of banking relationship and always paying cash, not having a credit history, just like with your personal life, you always want to have a credit history just in case, even if you don't need it. So I think that's pretty important. And then probably the last thing that I'd touch on is just having an emergency fund. And the general rule of thumb that I have for this is the same as it is for your personal life. You want to have 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses, whether it be through a line you can draw on or savings or some combination thereof, right? Or equity from your own personal self that you can throw into the business. Not having that sort of liquidity when there's a bad thing that happens, you don't have the ability or the flexibility to do then what you need to do if you don't have it.
Lots of follow-up questions. And if you have questions, you want to drop them in the chat. We'd love
Yeah.
to get your thoughts into the conversation with Mark. So let's go back to the banking relationship. I'm going to ask a really naive question.
Yep.
What does a good banking relationship look like? Because I hear people talk about it all the time and like, yeah, I got a guy that I can call, but like, should we be buds? Should I be calling him every 2 weeks? Like, I don't know what it means to have. I know that sounds dumb, but like,
Yeah.
I hear people say that all the time. Oh, do you know your banker? Well, we don't like have lunch every week.
No, and for most people in a small business, you don't need that. What you need is basically to have a revolving credit line that you've established every year, and you don't necessarily need to draw down on it, but you've got it in case of an emergency. And that's
Okay.
about it, really.
All right, that makes sense. So they know you, you know them, you've done business. It's not the first time you're calling them. And a question in the chat, Alan wants to know, is it easier to get financing when you don't need it versus when you need it?
Alan, are you asking me that question because you already know the answer? It's always harder to get a banker to help you out when you need it, right? When you're a distressed credit, they don't know you. You're only coming to them in your 11th hour of need. You're never going to get help. I think anybody who is dealing with the PPP loans knows this, and hopefully you've learned a lesson and won't do it again. But most people should know at this point that if the banker has to go through their know your customer rules to get to know you, and they've got 400,000 applications coming in, and they don't know you, and you've never done business with them before, and they haven't made a dime off of you, you're at the bottom of the list. That's just how it works, right? I mean, it's no different than if you got a bunch of customers clawing at you, you're going to reward the guys who are loyal, right? It's human nature to some degree, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think most people understand that, but know your banker ahead of time, have them get to know your business so that they're not trying to learn it when it's in a bad position. They know what it looks like in a good position, right? Those are all sort of important tips too, I think.
And it kind of reminds me, I mean, being 24 years old, it kind of reminds me back when I was a kid, when I first got my credit card. They're like, I'll go buy a few things and pay it off. So you start a good relationship. I know you're not exactly saying that, but if you're doing business with a bank and then you go back and ask them for money, you've already done business with the bank. Is that kind of the thing you're saying?
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
I want to give some clarity. You said having 3 to 6 months of funds for
Mhm.
emergencies. But then you said the ability to tap 3 to 6 months of funds. Obviously, it'd be better to have it sitting in the bank, or is that not something you recommend because you want to make sure that your cash is working for you? Like, is it the access to 3 to 6 months of debt, or 3 to 6 months of cash just chilling in the corner in case you need it?
I think it should be a combination of the two, and it kind of depends on the business that you're in, if I'm being vague about it, right? Because some businesses have an easier time getting that 3 to 6 months of cash to pay it off than others are going to. And I think if you've got a really narrow margin business, it's going to take you forever to get there, right? If you've got a very high margin business, then it's okay. I have a little less profit moving forward. And I think everybody knows what I mean by margin, I hope.
Sure.
So, um, yeah.
That makes sense. We've got Chef Michael is with us today, and he had a question about restaurants. So, how would you handle restaurants dealing with this cash flow issue that we're in right now?
I would say that there are a lot of federal and state programs right now to help you out. I know it's tough. I think restaurant clients are probably some of the toughest ones that we've had to deal with in terms of sort of their cash position. But it is helpful that there's at least a little bit for the hospitality industry right now to try and help them out. And I think they finally realized that, one industry isn't quite like all the others. And that was part of the reason why they tried to give bigger PPP loans to that segment. And they also tried to have some of these grant programs through the state and also through the federal government. So
Okay.
I'm assuming you know about most of those. If you don't, I would strongly encourage you to look into them.
Let's go to things that we can do better. We talked about some of the mistakes that small businesses make. Let's talk about how we can do a better day-to-day job of managing cash flow. And I'm curious about someone that's done, CFO work at the big time level, now working with people like me. For me, independent of having a banking relationship, there's the trusty credit card. Is that a good idea? Are credit cards a good idea for small business?
They are actually, believe it or not. So there's two things. One, you get points whenever you use your credit card. So that's 1 to 2% off of anything that you're buying, probably, maybe more than that, depending on the credit card. Sometimes it's 5. Um, if you're using that, that means that any of your cost of goods sold are 1% less. That means 1% more margin to your bottom line. That's a big deal. And I think so that's one thing. Second thing, if you pay off your credit card balance every single month, you're not incurring any interest. So you effectively have 30 days of float. You know what float is? Float is where you have a difference between when you have your cash income and you have your cash outflow. So when you don't have to pay out that cash for 30 days, that's effectively a 30-day interest-free loan. And so I think a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking, well, I should never have credit card debt because it's expensive. It's only expensive if you revolve it. It's not expensive if you don't. If you keep that average balance down to 0, and at the end of every statement period, you're at 0, you're good. So that's another reason why I think people should be kind of thinking about that as they look at their credit card relationship. Plus, that spend level then shows you have a banking relationship, you have credit, right? And all the other good things that sort of come with that.
Again, this might be obvious to everyone but me, but we've talked this entire time about cash flow, but we really haven't talked about us buying more or less or selling for a higher dollar amount. These are all behavioral things and choices about making cash flow more readily available. It's kind of like planning. So, what role does planning come into how to manage our cash flow?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely critical too, right? I think, you don't know what you can or can't take advantage of if you don't sort of have a business plan in place and you don't know how you're tracking against that plan, right? Um, I try to argue that everybody should have a business plan going into the year, and maybe you update it once a year about midway through the year. I think it's a very smart idea for you to, kind of say, okay, assuming my sales are X and my margins are Y, sort of, okay, how do I get to, the new building I want, or whatever improvement it is that I want to do next, or pay myself a bigger salary, or whatever it may be, offer my employees benefits, right? All these things are very important to a small business owner. And especially right now when we're all fighting for talent, it's hard to get people without some of those bells and whistles.
That's for sure. Question in the chat. Should we put our business credit cards in our LLC's name or in our personal name, or does it matter?
Company name.
Company
The
name.
reason why is the LLC will protect you in the event of a bankruptcy. If you use it for personal uses, then that's going to create a problem. But you want to make sure you've got that segregation between church and state when it comes to your business, whether it's an LLC, a C Corp, or an S Corp versus your personal. So not having that, and if you're using your personal card for an LLC or something like that, if you don't have that separation, what can happen is the legal protection you have from your LLC goes away, and they look through and they say, well, this LLC was effectively the same as the person, right? So why would I not be able to go after the person too when they declare bankruptcy, or because I slipped on the floor, right? Like,
wow.
There's a lot of things that you need to be thinking about where the LLC needs to be its own entity, needs to be completely separate from anything that's going on your personal side.
Well, that's properly terrifying. Thank you for that, Mark.
Sorry.
I appreciate that. Now, that's why you're here, to get us into the right frame of mind. With that, is there anything about cash flow and small businesses that we didn't cover yet that you want to make sure that everyone watching gets a chance to hear from you?
I think probably the biggest thing is pay attention to some of the technology and tools that are out there today that make it easier for you to get paid and make payments and manage this stuff. Trying to do it all in a spreadsheet is a bear. And if that's how you're managing, great, and it works for you. It's a huge time suck. And there are tools out there today that can help you with predicting sort of, okay, this is when this needs to go out, this is when this needs to come in, and you can kind of manage your business a little bit better. It costs a little bit of money, but is $40 a month worth it, right? Is sort of what I usually ask, right? And if the answer is yes, because you've got 10 or 12 bills that need to get paid every month, and they're not cyclical the way that you would expect, then that then sort of leads you to say, okay, I can use technology to make my life better, and I should be using technology to make my life better to the extent I can. So
yeah, it's always great to have you on. I love the way you explain things. You've got this high level knowledge, but you do a great job of putting it into language that even financially challenged folks like myself can understand. Mark Schanen from Supporting Strategies, thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we'll get you on again soon.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Mark Schanen, one of my favorite guests. Glad he could make time for us today. All right, so we're going to move on. Let's change the conversation and turn it to you. Today's Business Roundtable, I want to talk about a goal that you've set for this week. One thing that you know you have to get done this week. You want to accomplish it so you know you've had a good week at the end of the week. And maybe we can talk through how you're going to go about doing it. So hopefully you can take action on it. So we were asking for some volunteers. Chef Michael raised his hand. Chef, great to see you again, my friend. Tell us one thing you have to get done this week.
The one thing that I have to get done this week is pay for this Houston Food Festival that's coming up, pay the $500 rent fee. But before I do that, I'm canvassing some of the people that have already done it in the years past to find out if it is eventually going to make money. So as soon as I get those answers to those questions, I'll write the check.
That's awesome. Are you going to have a whole bunch of sponsors for that event as well?
Not personally. The event will have its own personal sponsors. I think I mentioned to you in LinkedIn that I'm using, because I'm new to the area, I'm going to be connecting with a local comedian who has a strong reputation out here, and he's agreed to kind of introduce me and my business to the public. And you gave a great suggestion as to the video clips and having him and I in these video clips that we just use in segments throughout the social media posts.
Yeah, well, having a known person sharing your message is a great way to go about it. All right, Chef Michael, do the thing, and we'd love to hear from you next week, whether you got it done, man. Good luck. Good to see you.
Good.
All right, Roger, thanks for joining us today, sir. How about you? What's on your mind? What's the one thing you got to get done this week?
Need 5 new leads. The pipeline, she is dry. So
you need to find 5 new leads.
Yeah, I'm going to find 5 new leads. Actually, I'm going to do the new leads, and I'm going to go back to my contact list of people I've done business with before. Need to fill up the pipeline a little bit. So I'm going for some higher ticket folks. That's why the new leads.
Yeah, because the old leads don't pay enough. We need those big leads, those big juicy leads.
Yep, big juicy leads.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing. I've got to get it done this week, so you guys can hold me accountable by Friday. Oh, shoot, Brad just joined. He's going to hold me accountable by Friday.
That's exactly what Brad's going to do. Let's go back to the how for a second, though. How do you go about doing that in the speaking game? Do you keep your eyes on some of the big conferences that you think might be able to be looking for speakers? Like, how do you go about it?
Two ways. I've got a couple of Google alerts set up for keywords to look for, when they're looking for speakers. The other thing I do is I research. I have access to speakers who are in the same space that I am, and so it's a known thing where we'll hit each other's previous clients, because if they've already had them one year, they might like someone similar the next. So that's how I'm going at it. So I've got the time now to finally get in on the work. All the other stuff is, I've gotten taken care of and is on a time plan, but time to get back to the business.
That's amazing. All right, man. Good luck. We will definitely hold you accountable. I hope you can find those 5 new leads and ultimately some sales. Dang it, because we need that cash flow. That's the theme of the day. All right, Tom Mitt, you're going to round us out here. Give us one thing that you're going to get done this week.
Well, besides being upright and mobile, sure. My whole thing for this week is I'm planning on ending the month, because that's this week.
True.
With the best month of the year.
Whoa.
So
Whoa.
I'm on the edge of that. Although I got to say, I work with Mark Schanen. He does a lot of work with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to add one thing about cash flow. I always sometimes think about cash flow as, you're in a retail business and there's a front door and a back door and there's a big conveyor belt going right between those two. And on that conveyor belt is all the cash. You get to watch it go by, but you don't really get to use it much. Sometimes it seems like that's what's going on. But anyhow, this month I'm planning to make it the best of the year. So thank you all.
I want to ask what Mark was saying about how you get the invoice and you wait as long as you can and then pay it. Is that the type of thing that he helps you do and make sure that you're running your cash flow that way? Because personally, I just can't stand having bills due. And even though it's the right thing to do, but like waiting until the last minute to pay it. How do you handle that? Are you like that? Or is it just no big deal to wait till the last minute and then pay the bill? How do you handle it?
I hold on to a dollar bill until George screams. And if you feel reluctant to do that, you should have Mark do your billing.
Yeah, because he'll make sure that you're doing that, but that maximizes your cash flow. I bet your accounts look nice and full and you know that you've got a nice backstop in hand, right?
They look better than they would if I would pass the money out right away all the time.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
That's true. That's true. All right. Well, it's an eye-opening discussion. All right. So how far are you from the best month ever? Like, is it achievable? Like, can you get it by Friday?
Oh yeah, it is. It's definitely achievable. It's always achievable. I mean, that's just a question of what you think you can do, not what's really there. So yeah, this is Monday. We've got till Friday. I'm let's see what I'm about 90% of the way there. So.
Wow. That's great.
Yep.
All right, man. Good luck. Want to hear from you next week with the best month ever, which would be quite the thing. Congrats. All right, guys. Thanks for sharing. I think it's interesting just to hear some of these goals that we're all dealing with, because one of the things that I believe is that we're kind of all on the same journey. We are just doing different things because we're all small business owners, and hearing what everyone is up to sometimes gives us the opportunity to support those that need it and learn from others. So I appreciate you guys participating this week. All right, let's move on with some announcements before we wrap up today's show and then do some networking after the show is over. We've got news on the retreat, the Idea Collective Retreat for small business owners, presented by Bank 59, November 5th through the 7th in Lake Geneva. The early bird discount tickets are ending Monday at 5 p.m. We put them on sale at the beginning of July, and now it's going to be just about 1 month of having the early bird tickets on sale, and they're going away Monday at 5 p.m. So if you've been thinking about coming to the retreat starring Mel Robbins, Jesse Cole, a bunch of other brilliant speakers, 3 days at the Grand Geneva Resort to connect and build alliances and learn what you need to have a killer 2022, you've been thinking about it? Stop thinking about it and get to buying your tickets. Because if you don't, tickets are going up 25% on Monday at 6 o'clock. So if you want to get in on the early bird ticket, get to smallbizretreat.com. That's smallbizretreat.com. That's the website. We want to see you grab those tickets before they go up in price, because you're cool. You're here today. You deserve the discount. We'd love to see you as well in November. Another new announcement, the Idea Collective Facebook group. We've got a new partnership. This is exciting. We're going to partner with the American Marketing Association of Milwaukee and Spectrum Reach for a night. Now listen. I know my audience. I know you. It's a night of beer and marketing, right? Come on. You're welcome. How to Become Extraordinary with Stan Phelps and David Rendell on Monday, August 2nd at 5 p.m. till 7:45. It's at Fermentorium Barrel House in Wauwatosa. Now, Stan and David, they're the authors of a new book called Pink Goldfish 2.0, Defy Normal and Exploit Imperfection. So this is Monday night, 5 o'clock in Wauwatosa, drinking beer together and learning about marketing. It's a new partnership we're going with the American Marketing Association of Milwaukee. So if you want to get those tickets, hit the link we're going to drop inside the chat, and we would love to see you there. Couple of reminders. If you're not a member of the Idea Collective community, you can scoop up 1 year free thanks to our friends at Bank 59. Their generous support of the community is helping us do big things. Hit to bank59.com/Idea Collective to learn more. And Small Business Rally Point is sponsored by Quick Trip. Don't make dinner tonight. Hit the hot spot. Hey. For steak, ranchero burritos with rice, penne with sausage and cream sauce, or mini manicotti and more. Grab a take-home meal and take the night off with Quick Trip. A big thanks to Mark for coming on the show this week. And if you're watching us and you want to see more content like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is youtube.com/Idea Collective. I'm Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.